toys and TV shows, comics and collecting and superheroes. There's no end to the useless stuff they know. But don't call them geeks, they're just regular Joes.
Welcome to the Regular Joe's podcast. I'm Dave Pisani.
I'm Barry Kay.
And I'm Todd Pleasant.
Insert awkward transition here.
Yeah. Welcome to the
Hello,
show, everybody.
You know, I'm going to do it right now, and I wrote myself a note. Who wins the glass?
Oh, yes.
Ooh, yes. I was curious if we were going to get to that.
Thank you all for... we said if whoever watched that ridiculously long Crystal Skull commentary, give us the code word and you enter it. A lot of you did, so I do appreciate that. So thank you very much. And the winner is selected randomly through a random generator, Darren Denzer.
Oh,
thank you, Darren.
Congratulations, Darren.
I will contact you probably before you hear this, so we'll figure that out.
You know, I got caught. I was behind on the website entries for the episodes. That glass is extremely hard to photograph.
Yeah.
I tried a number of different. And it occurred to me afterwards I should probably put a light inside of it, because I tried doing it lit from behind, lit from the front, whatever. It's really, really cool. But it's very, very hard to capture it. So
It came out. It's a little more subtle than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
But I like those glasses.
yeah, no, it's awesome, very unique.
I like those blue glasses, and there are actually blue glass. A lot of the blue glasses that you order from places are just sort of painted.
Yep.
Even those clear ones, these are not.
Yep.
So anyway, we'll contact you and get that out. Thank you for sitting through that ridiculous episode. Stuff, DS9 documentary that's out there. A couple other shows. We got some segments, all that good stuff. But why don't we go random? Did anyone want to go last? No, you wanted to go last on something else.
Yeah.
So, Todd, what do you got?
WB and CW are Warner Brothers, and the CW are bringing back Dark Shadows, which is really, really interesting.
Please tell me Johnny Depp is not.
Johnny Depp will not be associated with this, from what I understand. It's going to be called Dark Shadows Reincarnation. And I talked about this before a couple times. I loved this as a kid. It was basically a gothic soap opera. Okay.
Yeah.
But there's 1,225 episodes from 68 to 72.
There are?
Yeah.
Was it daily?
It was daily. Yeah. It was it was a soap opera.
Watching it.
And
I have no memory of it because I was too young. I don't think I've ever seen any
too young.
of it.
But one of the tricky things, I was actually reading about Dark Shadows recently. One of the tricky things was they were on a schedule and they live taped. They were preempted 4 times because of moon launches and moon landings and stuff like this. And so they had to work dialogue in for episodes that never aired, because they had to stay on a 5-episode schedule. So they had to work dialogue into the next, into subsequent shows to make up for stuff that didn't for the show, but the show moved slow enough that you could do that. They did a revival in 91, which had Adrian Paul and Ben Cross and a few other people we'll never see again in it. And that lasted a season. They did that Johnny Depp movie, which was a comedy. And but it'll be interesting to see what they do with this.
And now it's a TV series,
or it will be a TV series,
not a soap. Or
and
anything.
No, and it's the 91 series was, I think it was on CBS. It was a pretty straight kind of drama thing, and this was a drama, but it was, as a kid, it was awesome. You basically had this family that had a curse on it. And they were in Maine, and they had a 400-year-old cousin who was a vampire. They had werewolves, they had witches, they had all this kind of stuff, and it was the special effects.
So
were
it was
horrible.
like the Munsters, only not comedy.
No, it wasn't a comedy, but it was like, I mean, and it was pretty much from the standpoint of like this governess that's like hired to take care of the odd children and stuff. And again, it was very, very gothic. And I loved it. Again, it was like every afternoon I watched it with my mom, and it was really cool. And I'd be really interested to see if they do it and they do it right. So, yeah, I've actually rewatched a number of the episodes in the last few years, and it is god awful slow, but there's some cool stuff in there. What's also cool is seeing all the people in these episodes that like went on to do other things, because this was just what they did at the time. And a number of the original cast are still kicking around. I mean, David Selby is like a million years old now, but he still shows up and stuff. And so yeah. Anyways, I'm looking forward to that. So
cool. That's interesting. Barry, what do you got?
So we touched on this a little while back because we'd heard for years. We've heard rumors, but they officially announced this week that Tom Hanks is going to play Major Matt Mason.
That's mine. But that's it. I thought you had something else.
I do, but I didn't know that you had
that's
this.
Fine.
We'll talk about it. But so Paramount, apparently it's a Paramount movie. It's going to be Tom Hanks is going to produce it with Akiva Goldsmith, who's he wrote some Star Trek stuff, and the Picard showrunner is. I guess he wrote a short story about Major Matt Mason.
He wrote the story to it, yeah.
And they're using that as the inspiration for the script, apparently. So,
yeah, Tom Hanks was attached to it in the mid-2000s as a cartoon or as an animated thing, because he's always liked this property. And I don't know if he bought the rights himself, but he's going to produce it as well. So,
yeah, I mean, they didn't release much more about it other than that, but to me at this point, it's just a name. It doesn't mean. I mean,
it is
the toy line doesn't resonate.
I gotta say, I think even children of the '60s, probably 5 out of 10 boys, it would mean nothing to them. It's maybe even more than that. It was very much an also ran as far as an action figure went. And some amazingly cool stuff. I gotta say, there's just some of the coolest vehicles that were ever designed for action figures, and certainly at that point. But yeah, it's just it has, and I think part of it is because they were bendies essentially, and invariably they lost their the elbows and the shoulders broke inside the wires broke inside the figures. They had no staying power. So it wasn't the kind of thing that there was a big collector market for, and also they became very, very sticky over time. The paint came off, but
that stuff is expensive to buy
because, like I said, a lot of them disintegrated.
Yeah, in good shape, that stuff's worth a small fortune, but it's such a niche group of people that are passionate about it. I don't think the average person's ever heard of it.
It's got enough interest and cool stuff that it could just be like, oh, here's a cool action adventure astronaut thing.
Yeah,
it could be very cool. I ever tell you guys my Major Matt Mason story from when I was a kid? So I had one Major Matt Mason, and one of my brothers or somebody, anyways, threw it in the water at the lake where we had a cottage, and I never found it. And like the next summer, I found it. It'd been underwater for a year, and all the paint had come off it, and the face was like kind of like looked like it was bleached white, and we made him like the ghost astronaut. So he was, all the white paint had come off, so he was just like solid black, and like his face was all really pale and like bleached, and it was just it was just. So we had the evil Major Matt Mason figure for.
That's funny.
When you told that story, I probably told my story of my Evel Knievel, that we used to make parachutes and throw action figures up, and my Evel Knievel, who also was a bendy and would break his thing, and it got caught on the telephone wires, and it hung up there for about 15 years. And every so often I'd think about it, and I'd look up, and like, there it is. And then one day I looked up, I'm like, and it was gone. And I'm like, oh my God. It was literally 15 years later. I ran outside, and it was laying in the street.
The ropes
wild.
finally broke after all those years?
Yeah,
And
and I
that is-
still have it.
that is like the tragic
And
story of
it's
my
somewhere
Skyhawk,
in the attic.
which got hung up on a phone thing and just sat there disintegrating for the better part of a year. So, yeah.
But this was up there for years.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Anyway.
Did you have something
what
else,
do you got?
Dave?
Because I don't have anything else.
All right, so a quick one, and I threw this picture in the Dropbox in case you guys wanted to look at it, but apparently when X-Men Dark Phoenix went on Comcast's On Demand, in their channel guide, somebody posted, somebody who works at Comcast must have done this. It said X-Men Dark Phoenix dash an X-Men fan's worst nightmare. And there's a picture I put in the Dropbox folder. Somebody took a picture and posted it on Twitter. So I'm sure it didn't stay up there very long. I do this type of work for a living, and I know how you do that and how you take it down. And I'm sure it wasn't.
You think that's legit?
Oh,
Wow.
I think it's legit. Yes.
I'll ask about that. Not
Yeah.
that I know anybody, but
So I thought that was
I
interesting.
know people.
So the other thing that I had, which I know we were texting about.
It is
Oh.
extremely accurate.
Yeah, I'm debating whether I watch it or not. I would kind of like to see it just because I've seen every other X-Men movie, but I know what to
I'll
expect.
watch it, but I don't even know if I'll rent it on demand.
Barry, if I could mentally have it removed from my head and transferred to you, I would not only consent to that, I would pay.
Worse than the third one?
Certainly on a par with that. I will say there are some good characterizations in the third ones, and because the characters are carried over from previous films and they were reasonable characters in previous films that go completely awry. Nobody in this film acts the way they should. It's like
Who
it's
directed this one? Was it directed by an accused rapist?
yeah.
I don't think
it's
so.
directed.
But
Again, it was produced by the same guy who produced the third film. So figure that one out. I just don't know. Just so very bad. And when you have a film and you know it's bad, and you go into reshoots and you reshoot and then you release it and it's this bad, I'm actually really, really tempted what the first version to know what the first version looks like. Because there's nobody
Could it
out
have
there
been that
saying
much
the first
worse?
version was better. It's not like it's not like the Singer cut of Justice League.
did Todd freeze?
It's
Did I freeze?
yeah. If this thing
you
to
gotta
be
be
like
kidding me.
grade D minus, and this was a second pass, I just can't even imagine.
Boy, they just sort of ended on the low points with those last two movies. What a shame.
Yeah, yep, it really is.
So the last thing is, and I know we texted about this, apparently at Salt Lake City Comic-Con or whatever the heck it's
I think
called.
it was called Fan X.
FanX. Was anyone there? I know. Doesn't Tom usually go to that?
I don't know.
I know he went.
He
last
wasn't.
Year, maybe.
He wasn't there this weekend. I know that.
Yeah. So there was Hayden Christensen and Ian McDiarmid were both there. Anakin Skywalker and the Emperor, and they were to have a panel that was canceled.
At the
They
last
were at
minute.
the show.
Yeah, while
And,
people were in the
apparently-
room, it was canceled while people were in the room because I
they were-
saw.
Someone said it was canceled an hour and a half before.
Oh
No,
well, no,
I
but
think-
people,
I think-
people gather for these things. Like,
But
very
what I
early.
heard, or the video that I watched, they were the show was notified an hour and a half before, but I don't think they made the announcement until just before the panel when people were
Oh, that
entering
sucks.
and filling up the room.
Because what I saw was a video of endless people streaming out of there,
And the guy talking. Yeah, I
and
saw that one.
people not happy at all.
Yeah.
So
And apparently Disney was like, we can't have this panel happen.
Yeah, they were
and
worried
then, of course-
about spoilers, is what the official word was. At least so that's what the articles read anyway.
So people are speculating that this is some sort of indication that we're going to get more Anakin via Hayden Christensen. I think they could have just done this entirely for Ian McDiarmid. I mean, I don't think it has to be both of them, or even, I think they want to keep him in a bottle as much as possible.
And I don't think that Hayden, I mean, who knows? Maybe he shows up in this movie, but if not, he's got no ties to Lucasfilm at this point, other than that they bring him to some conventions, where Ian McDiarmid is currently under NDA, but Hayden's not, as far as, I mean, unless he's in the movie, he's not under NDA.
Okay,
so
that's exactly it. If he is in the movie, then he's got to be under an NDA.
But if he's not, he could say whatever he wants.
But do people think he's coming back as a Force ghost? Is that what the whole thing is?
Yeah, and that's where, like I'm saying, I think what they might be worried about is having two people on stage having a conversation with one person under NDA and one person not. And particularly when, we know what kind of egos these people tend to have. So, yeah, I
the timing of it is interesting, but it's also, there are so many conventions now that I get the sense that Disney has probably a really hard time keeping track of which celebrities are where and who's doing panels and what's going on. And
well, look at Billy D. Williams is in New York Comic Con. That dude with a couple of Colt 45s to spill all the beans.
I think he's just so happy to be involved again. He's going to keep his mouth tight.
I agree.
And that's the thing. I don't want to know anything. I don't want to hear anything.
Me either.
Who does? Are there Star Wars fans who want to know?
Yeah, apparently the entire script is out on the internet. I will not seek it out. I avoid that stuff, but there are people that seem to know what the hell is happening in every moment of that movie already.
I don't get it. Anyway,
I don't want to know.
You know who's not a jerk?
Okay,
who doesn't?
So let's get together and let's just brainstorm some transitions. Really,
who doesn't?
We need to go back to the numbers.
Makes it better.
Yes.
If you're a child at heart, the place to go is Fanboy Collectibles.
Absolutely.
Tons of stuff in stock. I don't know if we mentioned it. Hot Toys Mysterio.
Yeah, we have
stock. It's really cool.
No, that is not in stock. That just went up for pre-order this week.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right, pre-order.
They just announced it this week. It looks pretty cool.
That is very cool. But stuff in stock are
Darth Maul.
Darth Maul's in stock. I believe Infinity War's Iron Man diecast in stock.
Yep,
good stuff.
There's a Sith Trooper. I don't know whether that's in stock or not.
No, that just went up for pre-order this week. The new red Trooper from
Hot Toys, Sideshow, tons of statues, and it's probably 1,000 Batman statues if you're looking for one. Pops, all that stuff. Check them out, fanboycollectibles.com. Check them out at their store in Newtown, Connecticut. Tell them the Regular Joes sent you. Okie dokie. Let's talk about... There's a DS9 documentary, Star Trek Deep Space Nine documentary called... What's it called?
What we left behind.
And honestly, I wish they left the first 5 minutes behind.
I watched it on an airplane, and I almost shut it off and almost texted Todd, "What was this piece of crap you had me watch?" But I persevered, and it got better. But that opening sequence is cringeworthily bad.
Yeah.
So they had the dude who plays what, Nog or Rom?
Yeah, Rom.
Who's singing like... Why you wouldn't have James Darren, who was the singer?
Yeah.
He probably refused to do it.
I think, and I think that was kind of the thing, was like they were kind of doing a parody of that. It was very odd. I will say the entire thing was very odd.
I totally think that.
Ira Steven Bauer directed it.
And he was the producer of Star Trek. Yes. He is a disturbing guy to look at.
With the purple goatee.
Perpetual dark
glasses.
We got a lot of him in the Star Trek book that we read, the Star Trek history book.
But you didn't have to look at him.
Right, yeah. Okay. I will say, and I think right out of the chute about this documentary came out in May, the end of May.
It was a Kickstarter.
It was a Kickstarter kind of thing.
Indiegogo,
and
one of
Shout
those
Studios released it. This is I almost have a hard time applying the term documentary to it.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
It's more of a tribute to Deep Space Nine, and I think I would really caution anyone who is not a fan of the show, who doesn't have a deep-rooted appreciation for the show, to watch it, to not watch it. There's very little explanation of what it was. There's very little. For someone who's completely uninitiated to this series, you're not going to walk away from this understanding what it was and why it was and all that. It's a very fond remembrance, and definitely warts and all, because I mean, there's like basically people telling anecdotes and other people saying, "Yeah, that never happened," and
a couple of those.
Yeah, and it's very. I find it very interesting. I liked it a lot. There's one central piece in it that I thought was fantastic. We've never really gotten to see before. But
that was my favorite part of it. Was, I guess we can say. I mean,
yeah,
they got a bunch of the original writers together, and they, said we're going to spend a day locked in a room, and we're going to essentially break the story of if we did another season, what would it have been, and let's come up with the story idea for the opening episode of the next season, and that would set the stage.
If they were
for
doing
the rest of that.
a new season right now, 25 years later, and I mean, these are all people who made all the people in that writers' room have gone on to do other series, been showrunners in series. Ronald D. Moore was in there, who did Galactica. Right now does Outlander. And it's so all these people basically started on this show and went on to do a lot of other things. They got them back. They got them in a room together. I found that hugely interesting because you saw that process in a way we've seen people talk about it, but you never really see it.
The process was interesting. The episode they came up with was lackluster.
Yeah, well, again, it's I'm not sure I was that into it, but they needed to come up with something for everybody. One of the more interesting things about this is there was no Avery Brooks presence in this whatsoever, other than archival footage and very old interviews.
Well, and everything
really?
about Avery Brooks made it seem like he's nuts, and he
Well,
probably
he's
is.
also I don't know
A
about
little wacky.
nuts, but he walked away from this and put this behind him, and it is behind him.
But he came off like he was on another planet.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
I didn't get that, really. I get it. He was a total sort of methody actor guy of very few words.
Yep.
And directed a lot of them. I don't know how many he directed, but it sounded like a lot.
He directed quite a bit of them, and I think he's a very good actor. I think he did a very good job with this. I think they made some excellent points in here about how, this in the 90s, this guy basically, they were doing, episodes that were centered around, basically centered around scenes with all black cast members, that nobody else was doing this other than like sitcoms at the time.
Yeah, that stuff was interesting.
And
I feel like
it was interesting to think about that, and that nobody really recognizes that today.
They probably, when you look back at this, they probably did more of that kind of stuff like the original series did, more so than any of the other series did. Looked at current issues and put them in a sci-fi kind of context, the way they did with the half black, half white guys on the original series.
Yeah, with a little less heavy-handed.
Interracial kiss, all that kind of stuff.
They did, and this is one of the they talked about this a bit in the series, and they went into like, could they have done this immediately post 9/11, and a lot of the things they did, they probably could not have done. And there was this whole kind of subtext about basically taking people who were considered terrorists and reintegrating them and making them part of the government and all this kind of stuff. And this was a persistent theme through this. It's a very subversive series when you get right down to it. I mean, one of the things that they pointed out, the fact that the mission of this series announced in the pilot was to get Bajor, ready to join the Federation. and they never did that. That was in 7 seasons. They never actually got to that point, which is very, very unusual. There's a lot of stuff. I think they might have taken a little too much credit for it, but I think they did open the door for serialization in at least this genre. Okay, I don't know about TV as a whole, but they did have because again, they were the stepchild that nobody was paying attention to. They could get away with stuff that the other shows couldn't do. The other shows at best could do 2-parters, and they stretched. They had essentially a 10-episode serialized story at the end of the season, the last season, and
but they also had through lines through multiple seasons.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and they did it, but they did it with reoccurring characters, and they did it with, it's like I said, I think I've always really liked this show, probably more than either of you, I think, but
I feel like it's the one I've seen the least. Certainly,
I
since
think
it was out, and it's just tough.
I think I've only ever
thinking to
seen
myself,
most of
like,
the episodes once. I haven't rewatched a ton of it.
I'd like to revisit it, but 7 seasons of 20.
You can go. You can start
episodes.
with You can start with when at the point that Cisco shaves his head. You really can. I mean, and when the show changes when they get to Defiant, and those are the best episodes. They're a little stagnant. There's probably 5 episodes prior to that you need to see. A few of them they referenced in here. Interesting, they never mentioned until in the end credits.
Trials and Tribulations.
They never mentioned what is without question the best episode, and the name escapes me now, with Kira and the guy who was basically the war criminal, and that it was a fantastic psychological drama kind of thing between her and this guy, and who both viewed each other as terrorists, and because just
not to mention the one where they go to Ryza and you see that Dax has spots all the way down.
That's
her
also
body.
very, 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 very important.
What I found really surprising was, like I said, I've seen all of it, and it is probably my least favorite Trek show. Not to say I don't like it, but I had forgotten completely about Bobby Darin. Like, they focus on him a lot in this documentary, and I was like, holy crap, yeah, I guess he was in all of that, but
he was
totally
like
forgot
kind of
about
connecting.
him.
He was like a connecting tissue thing that they kept going with, and
I think this Ira guy has something about lounge singers that is pervasive through the series and this documentary.
well, I think he was keying into that because of the Bobby Darin thing, and I mean,
still, it was a little.
It didn't work.
James
I mean,
Darren.
look,
Yeah.
it's an Indiegogo thing, and it whatever, but it was well shot. I mean, it looked great, but it was I mean, this documentary needed a better editor, and
I think this guy was in a little too. He was believing his own.
well, he
press.
was way too close to the material, and this was not something that should have been produced by somebody who was at the heart of it to begin with. He was definitely the wrong person to do that. Like I said, I liked revisiting this stuff. I found it really, really interesting. I think that this is the show that people don't go. People have like rediscovered and are now discovering that there's a lot more depth to it than they ever knew. But it was the one show because it was never as episodic as any of the other shows. That there were so many different backstory characters and all this kind of stuff. You really had to have a sense. It was almost impenetrable for somebody coming in later, and because of that, it just never it never had quite that same kind of fan base. It is, as they said, it's perfect for streaming. Where you can watch all the episodes in a row. That you want to go through the first 2 seasons again, but I think it's more well received in that way. I think there's more depth to it now when you look at it in comparison to the stuff at that time. I rewatched a lot of Next Generation, and a lot of those episodes are far more predictable. There's some that have a good twist to them, but most of them are pretty predictable. that is rarely the case in Deep Space Nine. So it's his own. It is its own thing. It's definitely different than the others, and I like it for what it is. I think it's probably my third favorite of the series.
Wow, that's pretty high
Yeah.
up.
So
what's your first? Well, what's
what do
in
you
that
think?
list?
What do you think my first is?
Original,
Yeah.
original, next gen, and that.
Yeah, exactly. So I was never a Voyager person. I do like Enterprise, but I feel like Enterprise is incomplete in some ways. So, but it's there's some, like I said, there's some really, really good stuff in DS9. It's just and I'm glad they did this. It's interesting, but again, like I said, the key is if you're not a big fan of the show, do not commit the time to this, because you're not going to walk away with a good understanding of what it is and what it was.
Yeah, it wasn't about it. It was more. You're right. It's a recollection of it.
Yeah. It was a kind of walk down memory lane thing, and yeah.
Yeah, and so some of the editing to me just was weird. Like conversations would just end abruptly, and they would just cut to the next thing, and I don't know. It was
It got a little sloppy.
It was but also I think it was a little bit like he was driving it, and when things didn't quite match up with his recollection of things, he felt the need to include those but not give them a lot of weight. So like I definitely found that the whole thing with Terry Farrell very, very interesting. She was obviously very emotional about it.
Yeah,
and
you never got an answer on it.
And you never got it. I mean, they actually muddied it up a little bit.
That was covered extensively in the book. That
it is, well. And I think the book makes it a little more clear cut than this does. I think the book tells her story, and it tells other people saying, "I wish I'd known that was what was happening," because from our perspective, that's we weren't told this, and this we actually got to see a producer who said, yeah, that's not how it happened at all. So
it definitely was very unclear.
Yeah.
I think the other stuff was unclear in this.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I feel like it was one person's vision who was too close to the story, and
then felt the need to include other perspectives, and it wasn't.
But
it wasn't well done.
There's definitely a lot of. You really could have dug into the episodes. I mean, Trials and Tribulations is, while it's more fun than important, there's some really well done. It's one of the best. This effects and everything. That's something that brings a lot together. That was interesting.
If I were making this documentary, I would talk about probably the five significant episodes, and I would use that as one of them. And I would talk about the same things, and not spend so much time on the kind of random recollections, which again in several cases they discounted. So
and you had the one Cardassian guy who was just like bitching that he was never told he did a good job.
Yeah, Mark Almino. I mean,
he sounded like a little bit of a perv too.
He was a little whiny. I did find it really funny that like they just kept using Jeffrey Combs over and over again. I mean, he played 3 different characters in that series, and then went on to play Shran in Enterprise. They just really like that dude. Well,
let us know if you're a DS9 fan and you watched it and what you think, because there's some of you out there, I think. Okay, let's go. What's in the box?
Show you with the box. Who's in the box? What's in the box? What's in the box?
Regular Joe's What's in the Box.
Barry, is this where you want to go last?
I'll go last, yeah.
Okay. Todd?
Okay.
What's in the box?
So, not at all surprising in any way, I got another Catwoman figure. This just came in. I got it at Fanboy Collectibles. This is you can see the box here. It's a Kodo Bakaya Bishuju figure, which I was told today by someone who speaks Japanese means.
I'll tell you what it means. It means pretty girl.
What's it mean?
Bishoujo means pretty girl.
It means pretty young girl. Yes, it's exactly what
Yes.
it means. Yes. So, anyways, so this is that's
Giant breasts.
in this case, not so totally much, but anyways, it's kind of a cute Catwoman figure, and it's a little different than the other ones I have in terms of pose.
Very anime face.
Very kind of anime face. They all have the same face, and
I like the tail.
good Benjamins. You know, she's sitting on a stack of money, actually with Benjamin Franklin's face on them, which is kind of interesting.
Wow.
And a bunch of coins and stuff, and I'll put some pictures. And but yeah, so
That's cool.
Yeah. Anyways, it's a neat figure, and again, it just came in, and I just picked it up. Came today, so that's going to go onto the Catwoman shelf. So
Nice.
Dave,
Nice.
what do you got?
I think I mentioned wanting this a couple of weeks ago, and I got it. So this is an autograph picture of Michael Collins,
Oh,
the
great!
commander,
Nice.
pilot of Apollo 11, and it says it says Michael Collins, Apollo 11 CMP Command Module Pilot. I have a picture of him signed, but it's a spacesuit picture, and I had wanted one of his capsule. Now, I may have mentioned this when we talked about the Apollo 11 on the Apollo 11 episode. He was at this Space Fest, which is run by a company called Nova Space, who has contracts with a lot of the astronauts, and I couldn't get out to Space Fest, and I did mention that. But they had a bunch. I was waiting until after the Space Fest. They had a bunch on their website. So this is him in the command module itself during Apollo 11, and it's signed. So I'm gonna put that other one in a book, and I'm going to put this on the wall.
So that's a
above
photo
me
that
and
would have been
Buzz.
taken by either Buzz or
No, I feel like this was taken.
like
I
a
could be wrong.
publicity shot.
I feel like it was
beforehand?
taken by him by like a automatic.
Oh, okay.
Because this may be while he was alone in the thing.
And I was going to say, I like that he's solitary in that shot. I like that, it's not like him at the end of the row with the three of them or something like that, because that was his role, and that's cool.
Yeah.
So, Dave, was
And
that the one, the autograph that somebody questioned on you, the Michael
The
Collins?
one on the wall is the one they questioned.
How
Yeah.
do they look compared to each other?
They look? The problem is that one was done with a very thick magic marker,
Yeah.
and this is done with a very fine oil pen.
Yep.
So it's hard to say, but that one came from a very reliable source. So I really don't question that one, knowing who it came from.
Yep.
But that's of the three of them in only one sign. I don't like multiple people in a picture where only one thing is signed.
Yeah, right,
I
yeah.
have a couple things. And then as a bonus, again, I've been buying something from this. The autographs have this every week auction. Todd Mueller autographs.
Yeah, I put a
gotten
link on the website to it a few weeks ago.
Yeah, every Sunday they come up. So there are things like start at $5, and this is, hey, I could be wrong, but everything I know from what they are reputable company, and so it's an auction. What's my favorite sitcom? Anybody?
Odd Couple.
Oh, The Odd Couple. What'd you get? Oh my God, that's fantastic!
Wow.
It's autographed by Tony Randall and Jack Klugman. Here's the problem. This is like this giant. I really want 8x10s, and I've been getting a couple of these bigger format things. This is at least 11x14. I think it's bigger. It's too big. I mean, I'm not putting this in a frame, but it won't also fit in my autograph book, so I don't know what to do with it.
That's cool, though.
Yeah, it's funny, and I've met Tony. I saw him on the subway, and I talked to him, but he was in a bad mood twice before he passed away. But if you've never watched The Odd Couple, it's the best sitcom on television.
Now, I want
it
to
is-
ask you
it is
numbers,
abso-
but do
it
you
is absolutely
do you feel like you got a good deal on that?
Oh yeah, you can ask me numbers. Yeah. Oh, on both of them?
No. I mean, on the Jack Klugman and Tony Randall one.
$28.
Oh God, that's fantastic!
There's stuff that on these auctions that start at $5.
Yeah,
I signed up
gotta
and I get their
gotta start
emails,
looking
but
at that.
I haven't bought anything yet.
You know, it's funny this week. There's a Farrah Fawcett autograph. That's not cheap, though. I wouldn't mind having Farrah Fawcett's autograph. She's just passed away, obviously. There's a ton of Raquel Welch, even though I'm not a fan of hers. I'm like, they're pretty cheap. I would buy one. I mean, not that I don't like her, but anyway. The other one was a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So, anyway, Barry.
All right.
What's in the box?
Back in May, the Peter Mayhew Foundation announced that they were doing a memorial coin, like a challenge coin for Peter Mayhew for his passing or whatever. So I said, oh, okay, well, I always liked Peter Mayhew, and I was going to buy one, and I did. So it's this nice, like, brass-colored or copper-colored challenge coin that says
cool.
Peter Mayhew. It's got kind of the Chewbacca bandolier around the outside. It's got the years of his birth and his death, and on the back it's got like his autograph etched in there. And they're all, I think they made 5,000 of these coins, and that's got the bandolier around the bottom. And they had a deal where if you bought 4, you would get the challenge coin, which was the same coin but in like a pewter type color. So I said, why buy 1 when I can buy 4 and get 5? So I not only got one for me, I have one for each of you here.
Oh.
So you guys are each
fantastic.
going to get one of these, and actually the extra one is going to our friend Tom Spina. So we all got Peter Mayhew challenge coins.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You're very welcome. That's it.
Nice. Sorry, fans, you don't get one.
No, nobody else gets them but us. And they did sell out. I think they made 5,000 of the brass-colored ones, and then the challenge coins, I think they only made like 200 of these or 400 of these or something.
Really? Wow.
So you had to buy 4 to get the 5th coin. So it all went to charity, so I was very happy to do that.
That's good. That's definitely a good cause. Okay, we're going to quickly wrap up a couple of shows that we've talked about previously. So there'll probably be spoilers if you haven't watched them, so be aware. But we did talk about The Boys, and I think we were at the point where we had been sort of in the middle of it.
You
right?
guys
Yeah,
had
in the
seen a
beginning.
few episodes. I had only seen one when we talked about it. So,
Yeah.
but we've since all watched the whole series or season.
Yeah. It's first of all, it's one of the most talked about.
Without question, yeah. This is summer. It's probably one of the most talked about shows of the summer,
For good reason, I think, too.
And I think I think it was a surprise. I don't think this was as expected as
Came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, I hadn't even heard about it. It wasn't on my radar as something that was even coming.
Yeah.
I had read the comic. I had read probably 2/3 of the comic back in the day, and I remember it being very slow to publish. And I did go back and finish the comic, and I will say I like the show better than the comic. I think there's certain turns they took in the comic, even in the part that we've seen so far, that the show's treatment of them works much better.
I've heard that from a number of people.
Yeah. So, comic's dark. Even is much darker than this.
The show's pretty dark.
You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
it's still much, much darker than this. And
I gotta say, I think it's my favorite show I've seen in a really long time. I really
agree
enjoyed
with
it.
that.
I really,
It's
really
definitely-
like
and
it.
it's nice
I
'cause
think they did a great job with the casting.
Not expected, yeah.
Yep.
And it was accessible too because my wife watched it with me and she loved it too. It wasn't just a like a super nerd type thing. It had
Really? It's a little violent. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was good with it.
And again, I think the thing to get with this is that this is not your conventional. This is not like the world that Justice League is set in, or even like the world that Avengers is set in. That this is a world where there's a pretty good number of superheroes, and they're part of society, and they have there's a cult following. I think we likened it to like basically like sports teams and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's totally enmeshed in there. It's a big part of their culture, and not always in good ways. I found the religious things really, really interesting. The tie-ins with the religion and the how they're using that and manipulating people, and I found that curious.
I feel this could be totally. If there were superheroes, this could really happen.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
I think this
100%.
is a much more realistic, kind of integration than a lot of what we've seen, and also kind of in the way where I think the like Watchmen always, where it was like they were kind of like there and they were in the background and stuff like that. This is, in that same way they're well enmeshed in the society, and also the corporate thing makes absolute perfect sense.
Totally. And just the whole concept of if there really were people that had powers that, similar types of powers to what these characters have, who says that they would all be benevolent? And who says their personalities would all drive them to do good and not evil?
That's been a theme for decades in comics. I think this handles it extremely well and does a really good job. But I think the guy that plays the Homelander does a fantastic job.
Oh, he was really good.
He's conveys all that Superman stuff on one side, and then the other, he is so dark and so creepy in some ways. But
he can also literally turn it on and off at the drop of a dime.
Oh, that's what I'm saying, and it's very, very good. And there's that below the level menace there that it's very unsettling, and I think. It's very, very good.
There's a couple for me. There's a couple of turning points in it where it really you realize that it's not something you've seen before, and there's in the first episode there's some when the new girl comes in and you see how she's treated, but the scene on the airplane for me was like that. To me was like holy shit! I cannot believe what they just did.
That was right. Yeah, that's handled very differently in the comic. It's done better here. It's actually done. It's actually done better here. So it's one of the things. Again, they had in hindsight they were able to look at the whole series and go back. What is her name? Starlight and Huey are probably the closest approximations to those characters. Butcher is similar, but not entirely the same, and has some somewhat different motivations. But, really great adaptation. Again, when you can take source material that is a little overly ponderous, is a little slow, and make it move at this pace and be this satisfying, So
and they've already said it's renewed for a second season, right? So we know we're getting more. I loved it. I have recommended it to so many people. Can't say enough positive about it.
And as much as we love superheroes and what Marvel's doing and the stuff that's on TV that DC's doing and all that, this is almost a nice sort of break from that. It's still in the genre, but just turns it in a completely different direction. So it's nice to see.
It is also it's very regular person's perspective on this. And that's the thing. It's like. We think how cool it would be to live in a world with superheroes, and then we think, maybe if we were one of them. But Marvel
and DC TV for the most part show us when they show us flawed heroes, they're still heroes. So even their flaws, while they drive story and all that, they're not truly damaged. Most of them anyway aren't truly damaged people. There's some really damaged people in this show, and it really makes it for a different take on superheroes than I think we've really seen. I mean, outside of comics than we've seen, certainly on TV and I would say in movies too.
Yes,
sure.
Yep, I agree. Yeah. One of the a long running DC property is they've got video games and they've got a comic series, the Gods Among Us, and basically Injustice, Gods Among Us, and that's basically pretty much an evil Justice League, and the resistance to that, and that's very much kind of modeled after this. They do a better job with this. I've read all of that, and they do a better job in this. So
and the stuff with the Deep and with the dolphin and the lobster, with two of the funniest things I've seen on TV.
It's funny the lobster, too. There's a lot of
the
funny
lobster
stuff.
Is fantastic. It's
great stuff.
Yeah,
totally watch it. If you haven't watched it.
Yeah, we're doing our best not to spoil it here, and because there's a couple big things at the end that we're not going to get into, because you should see.
What, 8 episodes?
What's that?
Only, I think.
Yeah, it was 8 episodes.
Is it 8 or
really
10?
Easy to watch? Maybe it's
Yeah,
not.
it's
It's
a-
either 8 or 10.
It's
Whatever
it's
it is,
a
it goes
fast
fast.
watch, and it's well worthwhile. And like I said, the expect some darkness. This is not something you want to watch with your kids, but extremely well done. And I'm not sure if I was programming for Amazon, I would have taken this risk as a property, but I'm really glad that they did.
Yeah.
You know, we're really teetering on the line of superhero saturation, and this is a way that no one's gone this good. You know, like this before. It'll be interesting to see how Watchmen stacks up against this.
Yeah.
But yeah,
You know, it is interesting. It is on Amazon. I feel like, you know, you look at Netflix. Netflix is just cranking stuff out. You go look through the feed. There are 100 series, a lot of them sci-fi or movies that you've never heard of, but they're there. I feel like Amazon is definitely putting out better stuff.
Well, and Netflix keeps signing multi-hundreds of $1-million deals with all these movie directors now. I think Patty Jenkins just got a 3-movie deal with them for
Yes.
a couple hundred
Yep.
million.
I just feel like they're cranking out quantity instead of quality, and you know, not. I mean, this is, you know, I can't name nearly as many or see nearly as many, but the Amazon stuff has been.
Well, and
I
I'll
think,
also say the production value on The Boys is movie
Yes.
cinematic
The-
quality.
I will say the Amazon stuff that I've watched, the production value has been typically better than the Netflix
yeah,
stuff.
I agree with that.
I don't. Neither of you got into the what is it? The
Man in the High Tower.
Man in the High Tower. The
lot
production
going on there.
design on that is incredible. Is absolutely incredible. And it's still a good show. 3 seasons in, I'm still really enjoying it. But again, watch that, and just the production design is absolute
Tower,
top
Castle.
shelf.
I don't know, something. Man of the Castle.
Man in the High Castle, yeah.
that's it.
High Castle, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Watch
But-
The Boys, people. It's really good.
definitely watch
watch
The
The
Boys.
Boys.
It's again, I would definitely say my favorite thing this summer.
And now for something totally different. Let's just spend
Yes.
a minute or two talking about The End of Legion,
Yep.
which Dave can't relate to because he didn't watch it. But
I won't watch it.
I've said it before. It's the kind of show that every time it comes back on, every season starts up again, and I go, why am I watching this? It's so bizarre. And then within 10 minutes, I'm like, oh yeah, this is why I'm watching it, because it's one of the craziest, most insane but awesome shows I've ever seen.
Also incredibly well produced. Okay, they put detail in this thing. They go into the things in here. I mean, there's been episodes that have been like completely negated by the next episode, but it's really still okay because you saw everything that you saw. They went deep in time travel in this season, and not in the traditional way, more like just all the messed up shit that comes with time travel, and like, you know, the undoing the same thing over and over again, all the paradoxes and all this kind of stuff, and the consequences thereof. It was really, really good. I gotta say, I think they ended it at the right time. I think 3 seasons of this is really good. I think we got 3 very different, very unique seasons. I like getting Charles Xavier in this the way he was. No one could have predicted the ending quite the way they did the ending.
Right.
Which I don't even want to spoil for people who maybe have not got it yet. It was both totally unexpected and I think satisfying in some ways. Not clean in any way, and not like, you know, I mean, it's almost like one of these things where like nobody's really a good guy. It's
for a TV show like this to take on a subject like the end of the world and how they, you know, spoiler alert, prevent the end of the world at the end of it, it was really a unique take and something very ambitious for a show like this to take on.
I will also say, I think The Wall has been Pink Floyd's The Wall has been overused in pop culture, okay, and misused more often than used properly. I think this was the best use of it that I've ever seen outside of the wall, outside of the actual animated The Wall.
I would say that use of the song Mother and the way they did it was better than the way they used it in the movie The Wall. And I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan, and I love that movie.
Yeah.
But this was... I texted you. I'm like, you got to catch up on this thing because I've got to
Oh my
talk to you
God!
about what I just saw.
I've rewatched that sequence like 3 or 4 times. It was like they had it. They wrote it around that. They wrote the entire thing around that. In some ways, and beautiful.
But, I mean, this show
beautiful.
from episode 1 had clearly had elements, and that you could tell that the writers loved Pink Floyd. They named the female character Sydney Barrett.
Yes,
but
yes.
I was blown away by what they did with that, how they incorporated that in, and I think I mentioned it in a couple shows back. 3 episodes or 2 episodes before their series finale, they did an episode. It's an hour-long show where 50 minutes of it had almost nothing to do with the story.
Right? Yeah.
And they were willing to take that risk that far into the series. And as they were wrapping it up, it was just really, they took a lot of risks, and it was a really good payoff if you were willing to sort of take the ride.
And I will say, we talk a lot about like stuff that's you should binge and stuff that you should watch. This is a show that you want to binge. I don't think this show is served well by having a week to think about it in between. I think people...
I watched it that way. I didn't binge it. I watched it every
yeah,
week.
but
as the
what I'm saying
episodes
is,
came up.
I think people experiencing this, 8 or 10 episodes at a time are going to have a very different experience because I guess it's like one hit of acid after another, maybe. But
the other thing I'll mention is Aubrey Plaza, who was in Parks and Rec, was in this as well, and she plays one of the most twisted characters in the first
Ever.
2 seasons, and they managed to make her totally sympathetic in the 3rd season, and which was just great.
And exactly, and she departs near the end, and any other series would have figured out a way of shoehorning her back in there in the end, but it was unnecessary, and it was
her story was done.
Her story, and that's what I'm saying. That's the kind of thing. This is, I have huge respect for Noah Hawley who did this. I'll watch whatever he does next. I'm really, again, I was really, really impressed, and I think,
and they were okay with leaving some character stories either untold or unfinished,
or just
or
never, because that's what life is like. I mean, it's just
Right.
you don't get explanations for everything,
and not everybody got wrapped up in a neat bow. Some people ended in a bad way. Some people ended
without question. Some people
Yeah.
are just utterly undone, and the women with the mustaches creep me out. Okay.
yeah.
So,
I'm not yawning just because I'm just tired. There's nothing to do with
No,
talking about-
this is not a show for you, Dave. But
No, it's not.
And-
But I got to say, if you like I said, if you are into this, if for any reason you haven't seen the final season yet, you're in for pure joy. There's some weird ass shit in this, but there always is, and they've done things in this series they've never done anywhere else. Will never do anywhere else, and I'm glad I took the ride. So. And I'm glad
too.
you watched it too, Barry, because I had at least one person to talk to it about. So
yeah, I don't know anybody else that watched it besides you.
It is, I said, batshit crazy, but awesome. So, yep.
Okay. If you did watch, let us know if you're into it too. Okay, last thing. We're going to do a regular Joe's pick that we don't do all the time. Todd, this was your suggestion. What do you got to say about this?
A couple weeks ago, I came across a website that was interesting. I may not ever buy anything from this website, but I thought it would be something cool to share. And part of the reason was the tumbler that you got, the whiskey tumbler that you got that Sean had referred you to. Mm-hmm. I started looking for the original just to see, to see the history of it and stuff. And I stumbled across this particular website, which is filmandfurniture.com. Okay?
Hmm.
And it's very cool. It's like basically they identify a bunch of furniture pieces and objects d'art and things like that tumbler that are used in a number of in different films. They identify them and tell you where to buy them, including a bunch of things that were in Space Odyssey, Batman's desk chair from Batman versus Superman. They've they sell some stuff themselves, but they also like will refer to you other places which you can buy things that you can't. Very, very cool. And some crazy expensive shit in here. Yeah, again.
You know who also does that is, this is not my pick, but James Bond Lifestyle.
Okay.
Basically breaks down all of the films and tells you, especially the newer ones. The newer ones, they literally are like, here's where you buy his shoes, his suit,
interesting.
his tie, his jacket, these gloves, his glasses, everything. Yeah. And then they roll back to some of the older stuff too. Yeah. But they give you connections to like every single thing in the new movies.
That's interesting. Yeah, and here basically you could reconstruct Bruce Wayne's house with if you had a really big chunk of money to spend. So, anyways, that's cool. That's just something worth checking out.
That's good. I have to check that out.
Film and furniture. Yep.
Cool. Barry, what about you?
There's a movie website called Cinema Blend that there's a lot of websites like this one, but what they do have, which I've just recently started listening to, is a podcast that they do called Reel Blend, REEL Blend, and it's interesting to me because it's kind of like if the three of us were younger and film critics who had access to junkets and celebrities, this is the show we would be doing, because it's kind of like what we do at Rhode Island Comic Con, only they go out to junkets and they're huge film geeks, and they got to interview Quentin Tarantino. Like, they were out of their minds that they got 20 minutes with Quentin Tarantino. They all dressed up in Reservoir Dogs suits to do it. Like, they're like really into film and stuff.
Cool.
But it's actually a really good podcast. I've just started listening to it maybe 2-3 months ago. I started listening to it. I'm trying to remember who they had. Oh, it might have been. They were the ones that asked Ben Affleck at a junket, has Kevin Smith reached out to you yet about his Jay and Silent Bob movie? And he said, no, but I'm available. And Kevin Smith heard that and actually reached out to Ben Affleck as a result of that. And that story is what's, let me go check out their show. And I've listened to probably 8 or 10 episodes since then. And they're really into movies and stuff. And they're pretty passionate about it. So anyway, Reel Blend podcast.
Called? Real what?
Reel Blend. Reel, REEL Blend.
Oh, not Cinema Blend. Okay.
No, Cinema Blend is the website.
Oh, okay.
Real Blend is their podcast.
So I'm looking at
think
Cinema
they've also
Blend.
got something.
There's an article here that if I talked about it, it would violate what I suggested we do. But I'm going to. I'm definitely going to read this article at some point.
That guy could die 1,000 deaths.
So again, we're not
for him.
We're not going there. So
that's just for us. That's not for the listening audience.
That is not for the listening audience.
Okay.
Can we talk about it after the show?
We can talk about it after the show.
Sure.
So,
all right. So, Dave, what's your pick?
That guy's a piece of shit, is all I know. To the point where he was. I'm not mentioning anything. He was mentioned in our autograph Facebook page.
Yeah.
And they had to stop the comments because they were getting so bad, and people were like totally
too close,
screwing with people. Anyway,
skipping the subject. Move
right.
on. Yes,
mine
Dave,
is I didn't know where you were going with websites, so I have one. This is just an oddball one. I originally had it as it's called Firefly Actor Appearances.
Oh, cool.
.blogspot.com. Why it's that I don't know, but if you go to that, they basically tell you where everyone who's been in Firefly is appearing at conventions and stuff. But they also have like web pages for Battlestar Galactica, Doctor Who, Lord of the Rings, Lost, Star Trek, and Star Wars.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
if there's someone you want to meet or you want to get their autograph. And Stargate too. The Stargate, and Todd and I have. You go down the list on the Stargate one. There was every actor who's been in something else in genre, like it's just nonstop.
Yeah.
Who's been in Stargate?
Yep. I
mean, he's just from the top of the list. Richard Dean Anderson, obviously. Odo from DS9. Inara from Firefly, Adam
Robert
Baldwin,
Picardo.
Claudia Black, they've all been in stuff. Stargate was what, 12 seasons,
Yes,
11
yeah.
seasons.
Yep.
It's just no shortage of people. But it's good to check out if you have your favorite shows.
Basically, if you're an actor and you're from Canada or you've ever been to Canada, you were in Stargate. So
yeah,
Ever
Ernie
been to
Hudson,
Canada?
Sam Jones.
yes,
I'm going to say one more. Let's see, and who else? Robert Picardo was in it a lot.
Yep.
Rooker was in. I was in one episode, but he's doing a lot of appearances. Anyway, so that's something to check out.
Yeah,
if
that's
you're
cool.
Looking for those guys. Okay. Any secret last thoughts that I didn't know about in the beginning?
I just want to say I got a little behind on the website stuff, but everything is caught up. So our pictures and our links are there. This week we'll have pictures of our What's in the Box items, and we'll have the links that we referred to you to. So
Yeah, but check that out. RegularJoes.com. There's good galleries from last week's episode.
The episode
of
302.
Galaxy's Edge.
302 is got a lot of really good pictures you guys took. That stuff looks awesome. Looks really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. It's so I had texted you guys this. My wife never listens to the podcast, so I was shocked last week when she was basically throwing back at me that I said on the last show that my family was holding me back at Galaxy's Edge.
So this is maybe the point where Barry discovers that she just doesn't tell you she listens to the podcast.
So then a friend of mine at work who actually listens to our podcast called me today to say, I listened to the most recent show. I'm ready to go to Galaxy's Edge. And he goes, and I totally get what you're saying. I think my family would be holding me back too.
Yeah.
Nice.
Because over the summer, on my recommendation, they went up to Lake George and he went to Ticonderoga. And he said
fantastic.
that he brought his family and he felt like they were holding him back
Yep.
somewhat. So, yeah.
By the way, Shatner's going to be there again for Thanksgiving, and one of the things are you could get a tour, get a picture, get an autograph, and have Thanksgiving dinner.
He's
with
deep
Oh my God!
frying
How
turkeys.
cool would it be if he's pulling the turkey out of the like
No,
in
he's
Charlie
deep
X?
frying turkeys. I read that he's deep frying the turkeys.
No,
He's
but
cooking
remember in
them.
Charlie X when they had like real turkeys coming out of the food
that's true.
replicators?
Yeah. But is it crazy that he keeps going back up there?
I bet he
must
loves
love
it.
it.
I bet he just loves it.
I think it's awesome.
So
It's getting a little. That whole experience is about $1,300, by the way. But anyway, if you have not gone to Ticonderoga, you need to go. So check that out.
If you have any Trek in your bloodstream at all, you need to make that trip at some point. It's Mecca. It really
Yeah,
is.
for sure.
Absolutely.
So
And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
thanks for listening.